The room seemed to shrink under the weight of Chima's anger. Without warning, he reached into his coat and pulled out a gun, pointing it at Kola. "You think you can take my daughter from me?" he shouted, his voice filled with fury as he pulled the trigger. The Eze mansion stood tall and grand in Makana Hills, a symbol of Chima Eze's power and success. Its towering walls and impressive structure spoke of the wealth he had accumulated over the years. Chima was known for his sharp business mind, but there was something else about him that people feared. He was a man who could command respect with a single look, and even the bravest kept their distance. Living within this imposing house were his 3 daughters, Amaka, Chioma, and Amara. They were admired for their beauty and grace, and their names were mumbled with wonder among the young men in the community, but few dared to pursue them seriously because stories about Chima's anger against anyone who tried to come near them had spread far like wildfire. Chima's daughters lived under strict rules from a young age. They were taught that love could be dangerous and that no one could protect them as their father could. "No man will ever love you the way I do," Chima often said, his voice steady and cold. He would remind them that he had sacrificed greatly to secure their future, though he never explained what that sacrifice was. The girls accepted his words because they had never known anything different. The mansion was their world, beautiful yet suffocating. Amaka, the oldest, was strong-willed and longed for freedom more than other sisters. She was smart, confident, and dreamed of experiencing life outside the stone walls that surrounded her home. The only place she found a little peace was in the garden at the back of the mansion. It was there that she first met Kola. He was an architect brought in by Chima to oversee some renovations on the estate. Kola had kind eyes and an easy smile that made Amaka feel seen for the first time. They would meet in secret, sharing their dreams and hopes. For Amaka, Kola was a glimpse of the life she wanted, a place where she was loved, free, and able to choose her own path. But Chima was not someone who missed changes in his daughters. He noticed the way Amaka's eyes lit up recently and the new energy in her step. Suspicion crept in him and he tightened his control. He ordered his guards to keep an even closer watch on her and warned her never to defy him. "You do not know what is at stake," he said, his eyes sharp and unyielding. Amaka felt trapped, but she couldn't let go of Kola. She confided in her sisters, Chioma and Amara, who shared her pain and frustration. Chioma, the second-born, was thoughtful and often observed more than she spoke. She questioned their father's actions and the secret he's keeping anytime he said, "You do not know what is at stake." There were times when she would watch him staring into the distance, lost in thoughts that made his expression darken. Chioma began to wonder what he meant when he spoke of sacrifices and why he was so determined to keep them from finding love. One day, when Chima went for the community meeting, she sneaked into his study and started looking through his old records, finding financial documents that didn't add up and journals filled with strange symbols and notes she couldn't understand. She felt uneasy but didn't know how to put together all the information she saw to make sense of it. She felt disappointed, hoping to continue her research. Amara, the youngest, was gentle and often tried to see the best in their father. She believed his actions came from love and that he was just trying to protect them. When Chima spoke of his sacrifice, Amara would nod, thinking that he meant the hard work and dedication it took to provide them with a life of luxury. But even she couldn't ignore the way his mood would change when marriage or the idea of children came up. He would grow quiet and a shadow would pass over his face as if remembering something painful. One evening, Kola told Amaka he could no longer put her at risk. Chima's threats were real and Kola feared what would happen if he stayed. But Amaka would not let him go. She promised they have to find a way to be together, even if it meant leaving everything behind. The next day, Kola summoned up courage and decided to visit Chima to show that he was serious about his intentions to marry Amaka. He believed that if Chima saw his confidence and love for Amaka and saw that it was genuine, he would give his support and blessings. Kola stepped into the mansion and waited in the ornate living room, taking in the rich decoration that spoke of Chima's success and wealth. The heavy silence was broken by Chima's entrance. His eyes were cold and his expression was one of barely contained rage. "Why are you here?" Chima's voice was low but menacing. Kola took a deep breath and stood tall. "Sir, I love your daughter and I am here to ask for your blessing." The room seemed to shrink under the weight of Chima's anger. Without warning, he reached into his coat and pulled out a gun, pointing it at Kola. "You think you can take my daughter from me?" he shouted, his voice filled with fury. At that moment, Amaka entered the room, fear written all over her face. She threw herself at her father, knocking on his arm just as the gun went off. The sound was deafening and the bullets shattered an expensive painting on the wall. Kola didn't wait to see what would happen next. He ran, leaving the house and Amaka behind. Chaos filled the mansion as the guards rushed in and Chima shouted orders. The sisters were shaking. They had never seen their father so openly violent. The days that followed were filled with tension. Chima kept Amaka under strict watch, forbidding her from leaving the house. He threatened her with the same cold voice he used to command his employees. "No man will come between you and this family," he said. The other sister felt the change too. Chima's eyes were sharper, his presence more suffocating. Chioma couldn't help but feel that their father's behavior was connected to whatever secret he was hiding. Determined to dig deeper into whatever it is, Chioma continued her search. She went to her father's study again. She went through his old journals, trying to make sense of the notes and drawings. They spoke of power and agreements, of deals that promised wealth but came with a cost. The pieces were beginning to fit together, but she still couldn't get the full picture. Amaka, meanwhile, knew she couldn't stay any longer after the incident with Kola. The love she felt for Kola gave her strength, and she refused to live in fear anymore. She shared her plan to escape with her sisters. Chioma and Amara listened as she spoke, their hearts pounding. "I can't stay here anymore. Not like this. I'm leaving first thing tomorrow morning. You guys should take good care of yourself. After I settle wherever I'm going, I will keep you informed," Amaka said, her voice firm. Chioma agreed to help so their father won't find out, even though she was afraid. Amara hesitated but finally nodded, realizing that staying silent was no longer an option. The next morning, Chima discovered Amaka was gone. His rage was immediate and terrifying. He tore through the house, shouting her name and demanding answers, but Amaka had vanished, leaving behind only a short note that said, "I choose freedom." Chima's anger turned to something else, fear. His face paled and he locked himself in a study, refusing to come out for hours. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Amaka found refuge in a small town far from Makana Hills. She reached out to Kola and they began to build their life together. But whispers from home reached her ears. Her father was ill. His health had begun to fail, and no doctor could explain why. The once powerful man was becoming weaker by the day, his body frail, his voice no longer commanding. The sisters at home watched as their father changed before their eyes. He muttered to himself, speaking of broken promises and a future that was slipping away. One night, Chioma overheard him speaking to himself clearly for the first time in weeks. "I had no choice," he said, his voice trembling. "I needed the words to give them a future, but I didn't know it would come at this price." She pressed her ear to the door and listened as he confessed to the shadows about a pact he had made long ago. When their mother fell ill and they couldn't afford treatment, Chima had turned to an old herbalist about a deal that could bring wealth. Desperate and broken, he made the agreement, not understanding what it would cost. The deal was that his daughters would live under his care, never to marry or bear children. If they did, everything he gained would be lost and he would pay the ultimate price. Chioma's heart raised as the truth sank in. Chima's control his obsession with their safety. It was never about love. It was about fear, a desperate attempt to hold on to what he had bought. With a price too high to fathom, she shared what she had learned with Amara, who struggled to believe it at first, but the signs were there, and they both knew that Chima's actions were not just the result of an overprotective father, but a man who had gambled with their future. Few days later, news of Amaka's pregnancy reached them through a family friend, and Chima's condition worsened. He knew what it meant. The deal had been broken. His health continued to decline, and he became a shadow of the man he once was. Chioma and Amara knew they couldn't stay in the house that had become a prison. They made plans to leave and join Amaka, who had started a new life away from the dark legacy of their father. But even as they tried to move on, strange occurrences followed them. It was as if the deal their father had made still reached for them, trying to pull them back. They would hear whispers at night, and shadows seemed to move when no one was watching. Fear began to take root, and they knew they had to face what their father had done to break free. Amaka was determined to protect her unborn child, and she wouldn't let Chima's choices dictate their lives any longer. Chioma, with her sharp mind, found records of an old ritual that could reverse the kind of path Chima had made. It required strength, unity, and a willingness to confront the pain they had endured together. The sisters prepared for what would be the hardest challenge of their lives. They returned to the mansion, now dark and empty except for Chima, who lay in his room, too weak to speak. The air was heavy and the house felt colder than before. As if it knew what was coming, the sisters stood in the grand hall, where Chima had once ruled with an iron fist. They began the ritual, each one calling on their courage and the bond they shared as sisters. As they went through the ritual steps, memories flooded them, memories of their mother, of growing up under Chima's rules, of the moments when they felt trapped. They held hands and spoke words of release, words that rejected the choices their father had made on their behalf. The room felt charged, as if the very walls were listening. They pushed through the fear, refusing to be defined by the past. When the ritual ended, there was a stillness that none of them had felt before. It was as if the mansion had released a long-held breath. Chima passed away that night, his life taken by the broken path. The wealth that had come with so much pain began to fade, leaving only memories and lessons. The sisters sold what remained of the estate and used the money to create a foundation that supported young women facing similar struggles. They turned their story of pain into one of hope, giving back to the community and showing others that even the darkest past could be overcome. Amaka, Kola, and their child lived a life full of love and laughter. Chioma became a lawyer, dedicating herself to defending those who needed a voice. Amara found joy as a teacher, sharing her experiences and teaching strength through stories. The mansion was no longer a symbol of Chima's power, but a place that had been transformed into a community center, a place where women could come for support and find the courage to build their futures. Chima Eze's daughters carried the scars of their past, but they also carried the strength they had found in each other. They knew that their father's choices had shaped them, but they would not let his mistakes define their future. They were free at last, bound not by fear or control, but by the unbreakable love they shared. Thanks for watching and listening. Please like, comment, and share with friends. Click the subscribe button and turn on your notifications icon so you can be the first to know when interesting stories like this come up. Thank you.